Sharpening scrapers can be a good topic of conversation, whether we raise a large burr or a very small one and even hone it off so that we have a sharp edge. Depending on the material we're using, whether we're sharpening into end grain fibres or side grain fibres. So for me, perhaps no burr and a polished edge is best into end grain fibres. Whilst we're working on side grain fibres, we may well wish to raise a burr from this orientation. The difference being with the wheel moving away from the edge, pulling up a burr onto the top of the steel. It's a little more difficult to control keeping the tool onto the stone here, but of course it's dragging a burr up, whereas with the tool in the reverse orientation, with the burr being pushed onto the top, we would then polish and hone that off. And once more, keeping the top polished and keep polishing that surface will keep giving you a crisper edge. After all, if you look at the steel, you will see a grain structure within the steel, and the more that is polished, the finer that edge will be. Now that was great. Just letting the weight of the tool bear down onto the diamond wheel made that as easy as it's going to get. A lot of people are using smaller tips for hollowing and other jobs in wood turning these days, and they can be quite tricky as they're so small to sharpen. This particular tool is held in a nice bar with a flat underneath, so using the SVD-110 I'm able to put the tool on top of the jig plate here and swing the cutter across the surface of the wheel in a very controlled style, keeping that bevel angle. I have adjusted the cutter so that it's not in its usual working position, but it's in a position that's easy for me to sharpen with as I swing side to side. So plenty of pressure down onto the tool rest, the SVD-110, but not too much pressure onto the diamond wheel. We just want to allow those diamonds to cut that lovely bevel and push up a burr onto the cutting edge. Super. Contained in the packet with the SVD-186 is this shaft, and this is extremely useful for sharpening various cutters, or cutting tips should I say. What we're going to do is remove the screw from the top. I'm going to place this teardrop cutter on the screw and then making sure it's the right way up, thread it onto this shaft. This needs to be done up tight so that we don't have it slipping whilst we're inside the next part. So the next part is the sleeve, which is attached to the SVD-186. We're going to take this little ring off and the button which is on the end and the sleeve. The long part of the sleeve is going to slide over the shaft of the tool tip holder. And now, as long as this is tight, we're ready to sharpen. This is going to simply slide on to the universal support arm, and using the black pen method, I'm going to true up and find the edge that I wish to sharpen. And we're going to be in this orientation, so pulling a wonderful burr around the edge of this cutter. If I want to remove the burr, then of course I can polish it off on the leather wheel. So we have black pen the surface. I'm just going to check by placing the cutter on the wheel, rotating away. There'll be a bit of a squeak. Then I'm going to check that we have contact from top to bottom, as you should be able to clearly see here under that little bit of water. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and sharpen. So with gentle pressure, address the cutter to the wheel surface, rotating and produce that wonderful burr on the edge. really is the best way to sharpen these very familiar cutters. But we've reached all the way top, and now there is a beautiful burr ready to go and shear scrape with on this cutter. I use it a lot.